Cultivating Harmony. According to Chinese medicine, today is the first day of summer. It is the Qi node, summer begins. So I really wanted to talk a little bit about what summer means in Chinese medicine, and you can check out my other summer or fire element videos to get a deeper understanding. But today I wanted to speak about summer through a different lens, which is the Yellow Emperor's Classic. So this is one of the kind of original texts that talk about the principles of Chinese medicine, like the yin-yang, qi, 5 phases, and also seasonal living. It is the essential text of Chinese healing and health. So of course, this is a very important text to, acupuncturists or Chinese medicine, Taoism, anybody who's kind of interested in these topics to read. This classical text is said to be between 2,000 and 2,500 years old. But what's interesting is I feel like when we read it that not a lot has changed since then. And you're looking at me like, what? What do you mean nothing has changed since then? Of course, humans have evolved and we've came up with technology and all these things. When they talk about people who are healthy or unhealthy, right, that were happening back then as well. I wanted to read a few sentences from the Neijing because this is really kind of the book that helps to give us an idea of how we should conduct ourselves appropriately during the different seasons. So the first chapter is called The Universal Truth. And without going too deep into it, I wanted to read this because I think it really strikes a note. And I'm going to chop things together to kind of make it flow a little bit nicer. But it says, in the past, people practiced the Tao, the way of life. They understood the principle of balance, of yin and yang, as represented by transformation of the energies of the universe. They ate a balanced diet at regular times, arose and retired at regular hours, avoided overstressing their bodies and minds, and refrained from overindulgence of all kinds. They maintained well-being of body and minds, thus it is not surprising that they lived for over 100 years. Basically, this is talking about people of old, we can say, and we have stories of these almost in every religion, right, where people were living for 3, 4, 5, 8, 900 years and longer. And so this is kind of what they were talking about at the time, is that why were people able to live beyond 100 years? And now, right, we're seeing, let's say, early or premature death, at an earlier age. And so that was their explanation. And I mean, really, all those things are very basic, right? And that's why I always say Chinese medicine is not necessarily complex. I think in modern times, especially though, it can be difficult to actually execute because a lot of it goes against our more modern cultural values. But okay, let's reiterate. Balanced diet, regular time to sleep, wake up at a regular time, avoid overstressing the body and mind, and refrain from overindulgence of all kinds. So this can mean through intimacy, let's say drinking, overindulgence in eating, and things like that. They go on to say they were active but never depleted themselves. And I think that's something very important to today. And I talk a lot about this on my Instagram as well, about, over-exercising and what we see today with that. It continues to say, because they lived simply, these individuals knew contentment. And I talk also a lot about happiness versus contentment. So some interesting things to kind of take note of, right? But let's skip ahead and go into the second chapter, which begins talking about the season of summer. Summer in Chinese medicine, we know, generally starts either May 4th or May 5th, depending on just how the solar lunar calendar works, and lasts for 3 months. So the beginning of May, all of June, and then through July. It says, in the 3 months of summer, there is an abundance of sunshine and rain. The heaven energy descends and the earthly energy rises. When these energies merge, there is an intercourse between heaven and earth. Again, when we hear the word heaven in Chinese medicine and even in Chinese culture often, they're not referring to a religious idea of heaven, more so of heaven being the celestial, the sky above us, right? And earth being the ground below us. As a result, plants mature and animals, flowers, and fruit appear abundantly. One may retire somewhat later at this time of the year while still arising early. So when we talk about, okay, how should we be conducting ourselves in summer? They're saying, firstly, right, that these kind of energies are merging, but we can go to bed a little bit later, but it's still a good idea to wake up earlier. And I say this all the time. We kind of want to mimic the sun. We don't necessarily have to go literally 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. It's not about being exact. It's more about kind of this ebbing and flowing it and living with the seasons and not kind of going against them. One should refrain from anger and stay physically active to prevent the pores from closing and the qi from stagnating. One should not overindulge in sex, although one can indulge a bit more than in the other seasons. Emotionally, it is important to be happy and easygoing and not to hold grudges, so that the energy can flow freely and communicate between the external and the internal. In this way, illness may be averted in the fall. The season of fire and the heart also encompasses late summer, which corresponds to the earth element. Problems in the summer will cause injury to the heart and will manifest in the autumn. So we kind of have a lot to break down, but basically it's saying that we should be active, avoid anger, because this kind of keeps the energy flowing within the body and not stagnating. Be happy and easygoing and don't hold grudges. I think this all kind of goes with the idea of, being easygoing and not stagnating, but also communicating. If you remember from my other videos about the summer, is that the summer or the fire element is also related to the tongue, to speech, and to talking. So the idea of being able to express yourself openly and kind of freely. So if we have improper conduct during the summer, so if we are kind of living against these ways, we're going to see issues come fall. So it's important to conduct yourself appropriately during the summer. So if we skip ahead a little bit to chapter 3, it does have a little bit about summer, which says, in the summer, if too much sweating occurs in the heat, the chi will escape, the breath will become coarse and rapid, and one will feel irritable. These are symptoms of heat attacking the exterior. Now these are kind of get more into like diagnosis land, but what I wanted to point out about this is that, remember from my other videos, again, that the summer is related, or the fire element is related to sweating. And sweating is kind of a delicate thing because sweat is considered a fluid from the heart, okay? So this means it's very precious. And we have this idea in the West that, if I just sweat more and sweat, I'm just gonna like detox and sweat all the bad things out, which is maybe true to an extent. However, in Chinese medicine, we know that we only sweat just until the sweat breaks the exterior, the skin. They say that in the summer it's appropriate to work out, but once you feel the sweat actually break and you can feel the sweat on the skin, that is kind of like the peak. You don't want to continue exerting yourself beyond that. Any more beyond that, you are risking damaging blood, fluids, the yin aspects of the body. So again, just kind of be mindful that, sweating a little bit in summer, yes, is good, but we don't want to overdo it. Now, this isn't specific to summer, but it does talk about sweating, and I wanted to bring this up, especially in places that are more, the climate is hotter or humid, and the stores or buildings are very climate controlled, right? Air conditioning. It says that after heavy exertion and sweating, wind and cold can invade the skin, causing sha or red spots on the nose. If this wind and cold are allowed to accumulate over a long period, there will be, I'm going to say this wrong maybe, jiao chuang, lesions on the buttocks and in the rectal area with ulceration and boils. Okay, so what's important is that it's saying that when you exert yourself and there's heavy sweating, okay, you're opening the pores, that allows any kind of cold air conditioning or fans, wind, right, blowing into the pores. This is going to cause you to get sick, and this is where I talk about the 6 pernicious influences, which you can catch in that video. But yeah, one of the worst things you can do in the summer, like when you're hot, working out, or at the beach, is go inside the building or the car and blast the air conditioning. That is like terrible for you. So you can try to avoid that. Another thing that is not specific to summer, but since we do have some of the fire organ times being around noon, I wanted to bring up this point that says, the yang qi moves like the sun. As the sun begins to rise at dawn, the yang qi begins to move to the outer body and the pores open. The peak of the yang qi is at noon, and when the yang qi is most active, it is advisable to relax and stay quiet so that the yang qi does not escape. As the sun sets, the yang qi moves inward and the pores begin to close. So what's important about that is that we often say, especially in summer, that it's a good time, since we're staying awake for more hours of the day overall, it's a good time around noon or so to actually go indoors, rest, take a little nap, and kind of relax. And what's interesting, right, is that it says this in the Yellow Emperor's Classic. We also see many different cultures do this as well. During the heat or peak energy of the day, which would be solar noon, we see people kind of retreat. They go inside, they seek shade, they take a break, they have lunch, and we see this in places like Spain, right? So even though our energy is technically at the peak, it's actually advisable to kind of conserve this yang qi, because yang qi is kind of our power energy. It's important that we don't overspend that, and that we're using it wisely. And some more information I wanted to bring up was that the key to mastering health is to regulate the yin and the yang of the body. If the yin and yang balance is disrupted, it is like going through a year with spring but no winter, or winter, but no summer. When the yang is excessive and cannot contain itself, right? If we're living like it's summer 24/7, the yin will be consumed. And so if we remember, yin is kind of what keeps us cool, calmed, and nourished. So just some things to keep in mind, and maybe this makes more sense, some of the things I say. And something I wanted to point out is that it's not that there is right or wrong. It's about what is appropriate. And I say this in a lot of my videos. Everything has its appropriate time to do. It's just a matter of doing the appropriate thing at the appropriate time. So let me know what you guys think of the summer excerpts from the Neijing. And if you'd like to see more parts of the Neijing dissected, let me know below in the comments.